On Sunday, December 19th, the Israeli government made the decision to double its population on the Golan Heights, an area it has controlled since capturing it from Syria during the 1967 Six-Day War and annexing it in 1981. Despite the more moderate tone from rebel leaders who recently ousted President Bashar al-Assad, Israel stated that security threats from Syria still persist. Following Assad's departure from Syria on December 8th, Israeli troops entered a demilitarized zone within Syria, taking control of parts of Mount Hermon, which overlooks Damascus, and an abandoned Syrian military post. Israel referred to this military action as a temporary security measure. The Golan Heights, a fertile plateau spanning 1,200 square kilometers, 460 square miles, is a strategically important region that borders Lebanon, Jordan, and overlooks Israel's Galilee region. Why is the area controversial? Although the U.S. under President Donald Trump recognized Israeli sovereignty over the Golan in 2019, most countries have not accepted the annexation, and Syria has demanded Israel's withdrawal. The Golan was a key point in the 1973 Arab-Israeli War, when Syria attempted to reclaim it but was unsuccessful. An armistice was signed between Israel and Syria in 1974, and the Golan has remained mostly quiet since. While peace talks in 2000 over the return of the Golan failed, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu emphasized that Israel had no desire for conflict with Syria in a call with Trump ahead of the latter's return to the White House in January. Why does Israel want the Golan? Israel sees the Golan Heights as a vital security buffer. The ongoing Syrian civil war has proven the importance of the plateau in protecting Israeli towns from instability in neighboring Syria. Israel also expressed concerns about Iran's presence on Syria's side of the border, which could potentially launch attacks on Israel. Before Assad's fall, Israel had frequently bombed suspected Iranian military sites in Syria. The Golan also holds rich water resources and fertile land, which both Israel and Syria have historically coveted. Who lives on the Golan? Approximately 31,000 Israelis reside in the Golan, many of whom are involved in farming, particularly vineyards and tourism. The area is also home to around 24,000 Druze, an Arab minority that practices a sect of Islam. Many of the Druze living in Syria have historically supported Assad's regime, and several families have relatives on both sides of the border. While Israel offered the Druze the option of citizenship after annexing the Golan, most declined and continue to identify as Syrian. Who controls the Syrian side of the Golan? Before the outbreak of Syria's civil war in 2011, there was a tense standoff between Israeli and Syrian forces in the Golan. However, in 2014, Islamist rebels took over Quneitra province on the Syrian side, forcing Assad's troops to retreat. The area remained under rebel control until 2018, when Assad's forces, backed by Russia, retook the region. What separates the two sides of the Golan? The United Nations Disengagement Observer Force, UNDOF, oversees a demilitarized zone between the Israeli and Syrian forces, with military observers from the United Nations Truce Supervision Organization, USO. The area of separation covers 400 square kilometers, 155 square miles, where both countries' military forces are prohibited from operating under the ceasefire agreement. The area also includes a limitation zone where military presence and weapons are restricted. There is one crossing point between the two sides, mainly used by UN forces, Druze civilians, and for transporting agricultural goods. What has happened since Assad's ouster? In response to the recent changes in Syria, Netanyahu's government approved a plan to encourage population growth in the Golan, aiming to double the population. This plan, valued at 40 million shekels, $11 million, was presented in light of the ongoing conflict and the evolving situation on Syria's front. The decision has drawn condemnation from countries like Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates, UAE, with the UAE describing Israel's actions as a deliberate attempt to expand its occupation. Israel has conducted hundreds of airstrikes on Syrian military targets, claiming they were aimed at preventing rebel groups, including those with links to al-Qaeda and ISIS, from using Syrian military assets against Israel. Syria's interim leader, Ahmad al-Sharaa, criticized Israel's actions, calling them unjustified, but emphasized that his focus was on rebuilding Syria, not engaging in new conflicts. Shara, who leads the Islamist group Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, HTS, stressed the importance of diplomatic solutions for security and stability in the region. Meanwhile, Israel's Defense Minister Israel Katz warned that the situation in Syria posed an increased threat to Israel, despite the moderate image that rebel leaders are trying to project.